Hey everybody. Okay, I'm getting ready to make, this is my third video, I think. Oh, I'm on a roll now. Anyway, this one is, this covers a topic that really drives me batty at times. I think I mentioned in my last video that I have family members that work for the government, which, it's in the world we live in, because the government monopolizes so much of industry now, and especially like healthcare services, that's bound to happen. We don't have really much of a private industry for anyone that's into the health services to go into a private industry. So on one hand, I kind of expect and understand the fact that, if you want to go into the health services industry in any way, shape, or form, chances are you're probably going to be working for the government or in some kind of a weird public-private sector type mix-mash industry where it's paid for the government, but you might, work for a private company. But that's, Anyways, what I want to talk about is here in Canada now, especially in Ontario, they've issued these. It's called the Sunshine List in Ontario, where they're listing the salaries of the public sector workers. Now, this latest release that comes out was actually quite disturbing, to tell you the truth. I think it was last year, the Sunshine List for Ontario listed, I believe it was 98,000. Now, I'm not sure what the population of Ontario, the entire province, I should have looked that up before I started the video. A few million anyways. But Toronto, the city of Toronto and Ottawa are predominantly your two major, your urban centers, and that's where you're going to see the largest segment of your private sector or public sector employees, obviously. Now, we've gotten to the point now where the Sunshine List went from 2013 to 2014, 1 year in the difference. There was 98,000 public sector employees in Ontario that made in excess of $100,000 a year. Which, if you're Canadian, in the private sector to make $100,000 a year, it's quite a feat. It's quite a feat to make $100,000 a year in the private sector. If you don't own a business, a rather successful small to medium business, if you're actually an employee, not an owner of a business, but an employee for a company, and if you're not on high finance or Bay Street, to make $100,000 a year, it's quite a feat in Canada. But if you work for the government, well, last year it went from, or for 2013, it went from 98,000 to I believe it was 111,000. So no, I think it was in total 113. So 15,000 extra government employees from 2013 to 2014 reached that threshold of 100,000 a year. So now you're looking in excess of 110,000 public sector employees in Ontario that make over $100,000 a year. Now, after the auto manufacturers went through their big hoo-wah after the financial meltdown in 2008, before that, even if you were one of the higher paid employees at General Motors or Chrysler or Ford or any of the main three, to make $100,000 was still outside, no matter what level. Well, unless you get into the executive branches, right? But the people that actually did the work, to make $100,000 a year was, that's even then was a little bit out of reach for the most. Now, after the crash of '08, people actually in the auto manufacturing sector, which used to be some of the highest paid people in manufacturing in Canada, they've seen their salaries cut by half. So we're used to have employees doing the same kind of job on an assembly line in the production, making $36 an hour. The same person now walks into that identical job is making $18. So you're talking even less than $40,000 a year, and these are people that actually are producing, right? These are the people that are producing the wealth. Now, if you're working for government, you haven't produced nothing. You take that wealth, and that's how you make your living, but you're not producing anything. You're not, a pencil pusher in the government isn't producing anything in the real economy. Nothing. Your homes, your furniture, your TVs, your roads. Nobody in government builds roads, by the way, okay? I never seen anyone in government driving a paver or a dump truck, okay? Or a roller, for that matter. And take it from me, I've worked in the paving industry. I worked for 2 different places that did paving. We did the actual highways, the Trans-Canada highways. We did, municipal roads and routes, and we did secondary highways. There was no government. The only time you seen anyone that even had anything to do with government were the inspectors, which for the most part didn't even have a clue about what they were doing. They looked for guidance from people from the actual paving company to kind of help tell them, yeah, this is the way it should be done. So really, like I said, once again, introducing nothing. But these people, so we're doing the job at sometimes 1/4 of the salary of what these pencil pushers are making. Now think about that. Nowhere in the private sector would you ever run into a scenario where the people that do nothing, that provide no productive capacity in the business, making gigantic and enormous amounts of money over the people that actually do. Sure, you might have some executives, but like I said, people have a weird perception about certain executives in company. But if you actually look to who they are and what they do, they might get paid good, but they're doing an actual job that's, believe me, it is introducing, whether they're getting the contracts or whether they're doing the, getting the funding, the loans, whatever. They are being productive for the wealth that they're generating too. So the private sector, if you're not being productive and if your boss or the CEO or your shareholders, if you're not providing them with some return on their investment, you'll be gone tomorrow. Whereas in the government, it don't work that way. You could have a job for life. Well, that's actually what, especially the boomers, they went into these government positions predominantly because they knew it was lifelong jobs, security. Now, it used to be that was predominantly the reason why they went in. Job security. You knew that you had a job for life, which is a huge benefit. But it used to be that they made a little bit less than people in the private sector because they had the job security. Plus, there was externalities like benefits and vacation days and sick days that people in the public sector benefit from that very few in the private sector do. But they have completely over the years, and this is the thing with government, they have over the years, over the last few decades, you went to a job because it was secure. So you took a little bit of a cut in pay, but you knew that in 30 years you could still have that job. So if you bought a home or vehicles, you had security in mind. So you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of your cash for security. But now it's flipped. Well, it's actually doubled up, I should say, because now, in addition to the public sector having that security, which nowadays, as anyone knows, having job security in the private sector flipping the coin now, because you never know when your job's going to be axed. But you still have that job security in the public sector because they're more than willing to keep racking up the debts to keep them on the payroll. But in addition to that, they also make in excess of, okay, here's a now this is government statistics numbers, so you know that they're probably a little bit dressed down, probably substantially higher, but we'll just play with their own numbers. How's that? The average public sector employee makes 18 to 37% more than a comparable employee working in the private sector, according to a report from the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. Actually, no, this was from them. So there might be some some credibility here. Now, the report, which compares employee compensation in the private and public sector, found that when salaries, benefits, and working hours are factored in, a private sector employee makes up to $8,150 less per year and works up to 6 hours more a week compared to someone doing the same job for the government. So we're talking, actually, this is situations where government and private sector both have comparable positions. Now, once you step outside of many aspects of that, there's people that do positions in the private sector that nobody does in the government sector. So the correlation there is already skewed because, like I said, without the mortar, the bricks and mortar, or the computers, or the hardware, or the software, without the infrastructure that actually people, for the most part in the private sector, that build and create, all of this, the rest of this stuff is just figments of the mind. It's, you can come up with the greatest idea, but till you can plant that or create that in the real world, it's still just an idea. And it's people in the private sector that bring those ideas, and they implement them and then create them as an actual part of what it is to exist. Now, here's another thing. We know that the governments keep running these massive debts and deficits, constantly running up the debts. Listen to this statistic. If government workers were paid at the same rate, now this is just at the same rate, not less, at the same rate as their private sector counterparts, Canadian taxpayers would save up to $20 billion a year, according to the report. Now think about that. Ontario, which is running in the tens of billion deficits time after time after time, well, that tells you right there that they could dramatically cut down on the amount of debts and deficits that they're trying to pawn off on the successive generations just by evening the field. Not even putting them below where they really should be, because, I mean, they're the employees, right? I mean, that's the pretense, is they're the employee. The public sector is the employee. The taxpayer is the employer, right? So, they should at least be, really, the employee should be making less than the employer. But hey, even if we want even keel here, let's just make egalitarian and socialist bullcrap legit. Even if you're putting them on the even keel, it would still save the Canadian government $20 billion a year overall. That's a shitload of money that could be going into these services that people know, like healthcare, or helping the homeless, or because I like to help out people whenever I can too. But when I recognize the fact that we got spoiled government workers that are sitting there, these are the people that are keeping the housing expenses too. Like, these people are buying your 5, 6. Who do you think's buying all these homes for the most part? Yeah. So they're screwing everybody else on multiple fronts, on multiple levels. And we're paying out the ass in order for them to do it. To me, yeah, you've gotten to the point where you. This is beyond just being fair. This is socialism 101. This is where you're destroying the motivation and the abilities and the motivation of the people in the private sector. Why the fuck am I going to keep working my fucking ass off day after day, year after year after year, when I'm making less than the parasites that keep just sponging off of my productive wealth, and every time I turn around, they're wanting more and more and more of it. Yeah. So, yeah, this is beyond reproach, and this is the kind of thing that I find really disturbing, and I'm going to rail against this kind of stuff as much as I possibly can. So that's my first rant on the public sector employees. Once I get more comfortable with this, it's going to get a lot better, because these are some people that they really gripe my ass. Anyway, this is Bennett Hunter, a.k.a. the Canadian Libertarian, saying, I love liberty.